You've made a lot of waves, obviously, and gotten a lot of accolades for House of Cards. And that started in 2013, and that was...
Doesn't that feel like a long time ago now?
I know, God,
Yeah.
it's so weird, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I know, when I saw that, I was like, what? But, you know, you visualized this series using kind of predictive analytics and gut. And I'm just curious how you took a big gamble, very expensive show, David Fincher, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Worked out pretty well for you all, I think.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Definitely.
But tell me sort of what goes into figuring out when a show's going to hit, because I know you kind of said fans of Kevin Spacey, fans of political thrillers. You had sort of multiple Venn diagrams, right?
Yeah, it was the unintuitive things. Aaron Sorkin spoke last night and spoke about how difficult it was to get a show about Washington, D.C. politics on the air, even, you know, with West Wing. And it's true, there was a belief that people didn't care, and they certainly didn't care outside of the U.S. And so they were really hard to get made. So we looked at the show. I looked at, it came to us, if you think about it, it was a big, huge bet. But think about how it was hedged in a way. We had David Fincher attached to direct, Kevin Spacey and Robin Wright to star. We had 3 really great scripts by Beau Willimon, who was, at the time that they were pitching the show to us, was nominated for an Academy Award for Ides of March. So this is a pretty good package.
Right, yeah.
and the scripts really were phenomenal. And when you look at this all and say, well, this show really, is it about Washington? It's really about, you know, Shakespearean level greed and power and sex. And it could have taken, which takes place in every workplace. So it just happens to be in D.C. I mean, there's you know, employee politics at the grocery store that can, you know, can be that intriguing if you have a great director like David Fincher behind it. And so what we did, we looked at all the data and said, you know, is David Fincher a draw? And you find out how many people have seen all of David Fincher films, and they're really diverse. So, you know, it's not enough to say I like Fight Club. Almost everybody liked that movie if you like that kind of film. But he's done Fight Club and Social Network and Benjamin Button. I mean, a very broad selection of movies. And if you like all of them, you could say, yeah, you're probably a Fincher fan. And Kevin Spacey, you look at his movies, and are there people who watch a Kevin Spacey movie just because Kevin Spacey's in it? So arguably a bad Kevin Spacey movie that will perform really well with a subset of people. And by the way, it's The Big Kahuna. That's the worst Kevin Spacey movie. And so people who even like The Big Kahuna, and you get all these pools together and say, no, this audience has a big show. If it's executed really well, it's going to be great. But the idea is really using the data to size the audience instead of trying to create the show.
Is there a risk relying too much on the data? You and I were talking earlier about Seinfeld. You know, here was a comedy that NBC executives thought would never really catch fire. It was too niche. It was too Jewish. It was too New York. They wanted to kill it off multiple times. Warren Littlefield trashed it, you know, initially. And you know, do you worry about, I mean, that analytically, I don't think would have ever been a success if you had tested it, right?
Right.
So would you, like, if Seinfeld had come to you and said, I want to do a show, Ted, about nothing, would you have said, great?
I mean, I think it was a huge, great bet because somebody saw in Jerry Seinfeld the ability to make what Seinfeld eventually was, even if he didn't get it right out of the gate. You could see it just played out. John Mulaney is a great, unbelievable writer. Did anyone see the John Mulaney show on Fox with Martin Short? Nope. This is why it's got canceled.
One person.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mulaney. But the show is fantastic. He's a great writer, and the show just didn't quite click at the beginning. And there's no question if that show had 4 years to catch on, like the way Seinfeld did, that there would be something there. But the broadcast and network television, cable television today, just doesn't have that much time. You get 3 or 4 episodes, and if you haven't connected with the audience, you're done.
I mean, it's amazing they let Seinfeld grow.
Yeah.
I mean, it just shows how different the network environment is today versus what it was when Seinfeld first came out.
And if you look back at the old episodes, it's a very different show. I mean, his parents were cast different. I mean, the show really did evolve in those 4 years and became what it did. A couple of years ago here, James L. Brooks talked about Mary Tyler Moore, that show did not connect, even in his mind, until the 3rd year. So, I mean, if you think about it, in today's environment, that show would never have existed. Seinfeld would have never existed.